Okay, so after we identified the soul, the different parts and faculties of the soul, we split it in 5. The Rambam yesterday, in the beginning, the first half of the second Pirkei, categorizes all the mitzvahs and averos of the Torah, the meri, right, the meri and the mashmat, all the aseh and lois aseh in the Torah are basically in 2 parts of the 5, right? So you can really say 2.5, because the half is the chelik hasichli, is the intellectual, the reason that does have some mitzvahs and averos, maybe even the most fundamental mitzvahs and averos. That's, let's say, avodah zarah and yichud Hashem. That is in the reason and in the intellect, but the Torah is primarily not concerned with that part of with those mitzvahs, at least Pirkei Avos. So for the most part, and this is something we're going to see in the Rambam later, this is something the Rambam says in Nevuchim, and the Rambam says a couple of times that in Tamei mitzvahs, that the general idea of the mitzvahs in the Torah is to be mechanech a person, and therefore the chinuch, it's something that has to do with ma'aseh. It's his actions, his do's and don'ts, and that's really the reason for many mitzvahs in the Torah is, and maybe even most mitzvahs in the Torah, is to guide a person in a certain way to create a certain product. Therefore, most mitzvahs and averos are not in the tachlis itself, are not in the race, as we said yesterday in the race car metaphor. They are in they're in the mechanic. They're in the fixing the car. They're in making sure that we have a functional vehicle, and that's where most mitzvahs and averos are. So therefore, most mitzvahs and averos are in the sensory soul, and that is what you should look at, what you should eat, what you should touch, and so on and so forth. These are, and you could say primarily many mitzvahs and averos are in the appetite of soul, the desires. So that is many mitzvahs that have to do with emotions and feelings, and even mitzvahs that have to do with the general desire of a person, or is something that has to do with any type of type, even that has to do with the sensory soul. But most times, our prime patient is not the sensory soul. So usually the person we're talking to when we're talking about the souls is the appetite of soul. Givaldik. So that's what we saw yesterday. So yesterday the Rambam identified our a patient, right, in our clinic. When we're trying to heal the soul and we're trying to have a functional, healthy soul, the Torah is focusing on the aseh and the lois aseh are focusing on 2 out of the 5, right? 2.5. They are the sensory soul, the appetitive soul, and to some extent, definitely not our focal point, is the intellectual soul. Now, the Rambam is making a shtickle left turn. Don't think though that because most mitzvahs and averos are focused on these specific aspects, but when we talk that's where it's all at. You should understand that even though the aseh and lois aseh are focused on the sensory soul, let's say, a lot of it, right? All the be'ilas asuras this week's parasha, and all the machalas asuras, and the tumas and taharas, and all that, right? So that is all in the sensory soul. Much of it is in the sensory soul. So, but that's not where we are. That's not what the shleimus. When we're talking about a person of shleimus, then the milas and chesronos of a person are in, you could say, 2.5 of the souls, and now the 2.5 are the other way. So obviously, a person that's most muslim, the biggest mile of a person, and that's really the tzur of the person, that is the seichel. So when we're talking about a person, a healthy, not only a healthy person, when we're talking about someone that virtuous person, then his shleimus is in das and also in his midas. The other half is the sensory soul, because the sensory soul is sort of the way that the midas express themselves. So let's see how the Rambam says in its time. Now that we're talking about virtuous, right? So the fact that the Torah is busy with The asay and the lois asay are busy with the appetitive soul and the sensory soul. But when they give virtue, the end result is shnei minim. There are two types of milas. There's milas midiois, maybe midosiois, or milas sichlios. Ukeneged on shnei abchisios. Right? So you have when we're talking about moral integrity, moral milas, the virtuous person. So you have in his milas and in his intellect and in his reason. And the opposite of it, right? So you have someone who has moral integrity and you have someone who is morally debased, right? So those are the Rambam is going to the same thing is you have someone who in his seichel and his reason and his intellect came to be masig emes, and you have someone who came to sheker, right? So let's see what this means. Now he explains. Hamailas are sichlios. The milas in seichel. Obviously, where are they in the person? They are in the faculty of the soul that in the highest one, right? The top of the pyramid, in the reason. What does that mean? So when we talk about shleimus of seichel, we talk about first of all wisdom. Yedias asibis harachoykes v'akrovis, achar yedias metzias adover sheyichakru siboisa. So what does that mean? That is, that once we... So first of all, you have... Be'etzem, you can be mechalik in wisdom, and then... in reason. So what he says is like this. So what he says is like this. The first thing is that... Yediyas asibis harachoykes v'akrovis, achar yediyas metzias adav shechakru siboisa. So he's saying that sometimes when you know the basic cause and effect of something, right? So there's the basic... intuitive seichel that a person is born with, and that is the maila of the first maila in seichel is hold on, give me a second. Lashon is very difficult. Anyway, but what he's saying is like this, that the first, so you see Avos. Chochmah is wisdom. Wisdom is understanding things, understanding the cause and effect behind things, right? Asibis harachoykes v'akroivos, achar yedias metzias adav shechakru siboisa. Okay, so that is understanding how things work and what lies behind it, and what the cause and effect and so on are. And then you have the seichel, and the seichel you have a few different milas in the seichel. First of all, you have intuition, right? Miskalos harishonos is the certain axiomatic things that every person understands, and then you have acquired wisdom, right? So you have in seichel you would say common sense. Common sense, as everyone says today, common sense is not so common, right? So you have the axiomatic, fundamental, not taught, right? Because you have the second thing is acquired wisdom. Acquired wisdom is what people study. So the more you learn, the more you study, and the more seichel you acquire. The more knowledge, and the more you develop your brain, and the more emes yamasik, right? If you're not gonna practice and you're not going to pursue wisdom, then you won't have any wisdom. So let's start with the highest point, with the highest first, and that is what everyone understands, and that is the acquired wisdom of a person. So that is seichel, the seichel uni that he talks about, and that is acquired wisdom. That's a high one. Then one basic under that is not acquired wisdom, is intuitive. You could say intuitive, axiomatic, common sense. That is certain things that you understand on a very basic level, and these are all inyanim in seichel. So you have the seichel of a person has all these different types of chachma. Now you have also you have natural milas and seichel. Mahen hacharifus v'tuv ha'avona v'tuv tfisas adava b'meiras b'lezman b'zman kotzamoid. Upchises ha'koich hepech elu oishekanegdam. So the Rambam says like this: there are a few different types of milas and seichel. First of all, there's natural given milas and seichel. Someone has a good head, a good memory, a fast tfisa, right? He could understand deep things. He has very good critical thinking, and he chaps things fast. So these are natural gifts. Then you have the born cause and effect things that everyone understands. Then you have acquired wisdom. All these different milas. So these are milas. You have someone who thinks fast, chaps fast, remembers well, and knows how to use his brain. And he acquired a lot of wisdom, and he understands common sense. This is the most Muslim seichel you ever met. And the chesaron of it is vice versa, basically. Anyone who has the opposite. So the opposite of these things are chesaronis. Fine. But the Rambam said also, this is not our sugya. So we described before why this is not our sugya. Now, so the milas in midas, that is only the appetite of desire, conscious, emotional soul. And the sensory soul, and meaning the sight and the touch and the smell and whatever, all that is an instrument to the appetite of soul. So the mila, let's say, if you see a guy coming into there's a kiddush, right? There's a kiddush and you see someone, a 50-year-old guy, throwing himself on the food like he's a little baby. So that is not a chesaron in touch, it's not a chesaron in smell, it's not a chesaron in anything. It's a chesaron in his appetite of soul. And I don't mean the appetite in the food, I mean the appetite in the his emotions are not regulated, his relationship to food is not, all these things, there's 100 different, his appetite of soul is broken, not his sensory soul. His sensory soul might be okay. But his issue, the reason why he's going to the doctor is because his midas, his moral system is messed up. Fine. So that's what the Rambam says. So the midas of the midas, all midas, the whole sugya of midas belongs in the appetitive conscious soul. And the sensory soul is an instrument to the appetitive soul. And there's a lot of midas in the emotional soul. So this is someone who's reserved and someone who forgives, and tzedek is justice, and savlanos is patience, and anov is humility. His stopkus is someone who's happy with what he has. Gvura is a certain heroism. Nemanos is trustworthiness. Vizulasam. Right. So these are all milas. Now, when we see someone who's reserved and he's humble and he's patient, this sugya, right? These virtues lie in the conscious, emotional soul. Let's come back to this line in another minute. The nutritive soul and the imaginative soul. And yesterday we saw that the imaginative soul is an autopilot system, just like the nutritive soul. There's no mile and chesaron. Someone has a good digestive system, someone has a bad digestive system. Okay, let's recap, because half of the time I was trying to find myself. So let's be misakem what he says. So the Rambam says like this: when we're talking about milas and chesaronis, we're talking about virtuous. We're talking about the product that we want, that we're looking out for. We said the asay and the lois we took here yesterday. So the Torah directs its orders to the sensory soul and to the appetite of emotional soul. But the milas of a person, a good person, a healthy person, a shleimusdige person, right? The person that we want to look like, the person that we want to get to, the milas and chesaronis of a person are in the reason and in the intellect. That is someone who has a developed intellect, and there's a lot of milas in the intellectual soul, in the reason. There's milas, there's natural milas, there's acquired milas, there's axiomatic that we said, like the certain 2 + 2 is 4 type of reason. Fine. So that is in the seichel. But the primary, but that the Rambam said, ein mekar mekan. This is not our sugya. Our sugya is Masechtas Avos, that is the midas. The midas of a person, all the midas and chesaronis of a person are in the appetite of soul, and that is what we're going to talk about. The Rambam is very, very interesting words hiding over here in the Rambam. The Rambam, when he talks about the milas and chesronos of the mind, he says that the milas are what I mentioned, and the chesronos are the opposite. Okay? And when he spoke about the midos, he said that the milas are humility and justice and patience, and the opposite is not the opposite. The pchisus, right? The lack, the chesaron of it is not, the deficiency is not the opposite. It is the imbalanced. And that is, in these tiny 4 words, he has the entire thesis of Shemona Prakim that he's going to go from this forward. Because the seichel is a ladder. And the higher you go up on the ladder, the better you are. So the maila is someone who's going up. And so the way up is good, the way down is bad. Obviously the best one is all the way in the top. And anytime you go down that ladder, you're going to the direction of bad. On the other hand, when we're talking about midas is the equilibrium. Midas is the golden rule, the perfect middle. So there, it's not about up and down. It's just the opposite. You can't go to any extreme. Someone who's patient is not always patient, right? Sometimes the situation calls for him to be upset and to act in certain ways, right? So if you have two, the challenge that the Rambam gives us over here is that a person at the same time has to strive for mental, intellectual greatness and for moral equilibrium. Sometimes you tell a person, focus, you just be mediocre. You should gear your whole life to mediocrity. And first of all, that type of person you could demand that from a person or a population. You just be mediocre. Your entire life should be focused on mediocrity. Then you can tell the person, I want you to strive to the extreme. These are 2 very different types of people. What the Rambam is saying, I want part of you to see only the way up. And any step down is a problem, right? You have to, when you're talking about reason, we're talking about das, you have to strive to go up and up and up, and any step down is bad. And then at the same time, while you're fully driven, you're driven every single day of your life to develop further and to understand better and to strive for the truth. At the same time, your emotional regulation should be perfectly in the middle. And any extremity is bad. And in these 2 extremes, so now, Masechtas Avos is not talking about these 2 extremes. Masechtas Avos is only going to focus on the moral code and the conduct of a person as it expresses itself in the sensory soul, but the work is to be done in the emotional soul, right? The emotional, we call it the appetite of emotional desires, that's where it's at. And that's where all our work is going to be. But at the same time, you have to understand what the general picture is, and the general person that we're striving to be is someone with the shleimus de gedas and of the highest caliber. Now again, obviously every person, lefi the mind that he has, right? Everyone has a different type of mind, and everyone through his mind could strive to develop it to the greatest possible, but to the extreme. And emotionally, perfectly balanced, ruhig, equilibrium. Gewaldig. That is the second Pirkei of Shemona Prakim.